Hey, let me ask you a question. Do you like UV printing? Do you like shiny things? Do you like cutting things with your laser? Well, then check this out.
Are you ready?
Hey everybody, welcome back to Laser Engraving 911. So I hope you're ready to have some fun because on this episode, I'm gonna walk you through the whole process of how I use the Eufy Make UV printer, my laser cutter, and some Laser Max by Romark metallic acrylic to create some of the coolest decals that you've seen in quite a while. So if that sounds like something you wanna get into, then buckle up, get your pen and paper out, because we're about to get into it on Laser Engraving 911. All right, first things first, here's what we got to do. I need to show you the Adobe Live Trace features so we can knock out some of these colors for these decals that we're going to make on this Laser Max. So this is step one, is preparing the artwork. So I grabbed this image off the internet. It is currently a bitmap, and what we're going to do is we're going to use Adobe Live Trace because we want to separate these colors. So I brought in the image, and then I'm going to come over here to my Live Trace panel. If it's not open already, you're going to go to Windows and open the Image Trace panel, right? So we got that, and then I'm going to select this to 6 colors, not 128 colors, because there's about 6 colors in here, and I don't want to have so many different shades of colors. I'm working with an image that's very easy to separate the colors. Other more complex images with more colors could be more difficult to knock out the colors that you want. So I set it to 6, the threshold to 6 colors. I'm going to go to color first. If you notice that, I did have to switch that there. So I switched the style of tracing to color, and then I'm going to bring this down to 6 colors, and I'm going to hit trace. And it's going to analyze the image and go ahead and separate that PNG into 6 separate vector colors. All right, so that did a pretty good job. It separated it into 6 colors. So I'm happy with that. So what I'm going to do now at this point is I'm going to click expand. And now this image is a colored vector. So, but we need to knock out the colors because remember, we're going to be printing on the brushed steel Laser Max, and I want that chrome to shine through. So we got to get rid of those colors. So I'm going to go to Object, Ungroup. First thing I'm going to do is select white and then select same fill color and get rid of all the white in the image. I'm going to get rid of this down here. And now, so you can see this a little better, I'm going to move this off of the white. So that's what we're left with. Looks like we got a little piece of something right there. I don't want that. So now what I want to do first is I'm going to group this. I'm going to make a copy of it. I held down Shift and Alt and I dragged a copy of it. And I'm going to use the Pathfinder tool to completely create a shape, the outline of this. I'm going to fill all this in and we'll explain why. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hit merge and unite. And now what I did is I created an exact shape of that. And I'm going to unfill that in here in the color, and I'm going to select no fill. All right. So now that's just a shape. Okay. We haven't added a stroke to it. We'll get back to that in a second. Now over here, actually, I'm going to group it again and ungroup all. So now I've ungrouped everything. These are individual components now. See that? All the colors are separated. So I'm going to select this cream color and I'm going to use that tool again. Select, same, fill color. And then I'm going to hit delete. So now all the cream is gone. The next color I'm going to remove is the blue, because I want even more chrome to come through. So I'm going to select any piece of the blue. I'm going to go to select, same, fill color, and hit delete. That is what I want, because everywhere now that it's not going to print, any of those colors, I'm printing on a reflective surface, the Laser Max, that chrome is going to shine through. So now that I'm done removing the colors I want, I'm going to highlight everything, Control G, and group it all together. And I'm going to hit merge. Didn't want to do that. Just merge. I just want to merge it. Now, what are we going to do with this outline? Couple of things. So we're going to add a stroke on the inside of it, because this outline is not only going to, we're going to actually duplicate it again. So now we have, if you see, we have 3. We have 2 outlines and our actual print file. So on the first one, I'm going to add a stroke up here using the stroke feature. And I'm going to add a little bit of a stroke, but then I'm going to click right next to it. And there is the stroke drop-down menu. And I'm going to set the stroke to the inside. Okay. And I'm going to start adding a stroke, and you'll see it's adding a stroke on the inside of our shape. And I want it to be kind of thick for 2 reasons. One, I'm going to print this on a blank piece of cardboard in the Eufy Make, and that is going to be where I'm going to place my laser cut shape. Second of all, I want to use it in an artistic way as a border around this Terminator skull. So once I've get the stroke to the thickness that I want for the border, I'm going to go to Object, Expand Appearance, and that actually made it into a shape. I'm going to zoom out here for a second. I'm going to make a copy of this, and I'm going to select this new shape that I made. I'm going to hold down Shift, select the skull, and then I'm going to tap the skull again, because that's going to tell it that I want to align them perfectly. Now look at what we did. We added a border around the whole thing to kind of close it off a little bit, right? So that's what I want. And then I'm going to group that again. And now we have this shape, which we're going to print on a blank canvas. And then finally, we have our cut file that we can use to cut out a shape out of any kind of acrylic that you want. I'm just going to cut all these out from Laser Max because I am trying to show how printing on metallic acrylic and utilizing that metallic color to shine through your artwork is a really cool effect. So that's how I separate colors or knock out colors in Adobe Illustrator. You can do this in Canva. I think you can do it in other art software. If you can create a vector and you can separate the colors, then you can remove the colors that you want to replace those colors with the color of your acrylic. Now, let me show you what the final stuff looks like. So here is my final artwork, and I'll zoom in on this so you can see. So I have obviously added a little bit of little T2 Terminator 2 here on the back side of this. That's all one vector. On the Porsche logo, I did the same treatment. I downloaded a PNG. I live traced it with however many colors were within that. So I used, I think this one had 4 colors in it, and then I knocked out all the yellow that was in the original logo. And then on this last one, this was already an SVG, and all I did was knock out the gold color that was in the letters because I knew I was going to put that one on the copper Laser Max. This is what I'm going to print first so I know where to put my laser cut row mark, right? Same thing here. I'm going to print this first so I know where to put my laser cut row mark. And I'm going to print this circle so I know where to put my laser cut circle. What I'm showing you is that you don't have to have print to cut, and you can get great registration with the Eufy Make using this method. Now that we've got all of our artwork prepared, and I've shown you how to separate colors, knock out colors, I think that next we need to go over and laser cut some shapes and then get over to the Eufy Make and print these suckers out so you can see how awesome this is. So let's do it. All right, so now that we've got our color files done, our trace outlines done for the Eufy Make, and we made our cut files for the CO2 laser, it's time to cut those out. And then we'll head over to the Eufy Make and I'll show you exactly how to register your art right to these cuts. So I've got my brushed steel Laser Max by Romark. I've got my brushed copper Laser Max by Romark, and I've got my brushed gold. And you notice that I have the 3M backing already on it, and we're going to be cutting those specific shapes that we made using the Epilog CO2 laser. And for those of you wondering, it's a 120 watt Epilog M2 Fusion. So let's go ahead and get those shapes cut out. I think we'll cut gold first. And one of the things that you want to keep in mind is I am going to cut my shapes out to where one thing to keep in mind, I'm going to cut my shapes out, and this is total preference, where the brush marks are going horizontal, not vertical. But, I mean, if you like vertical, then, you know, go for it. I'm gonna actually cut 3 out in case I have any goof ups. All right, I'm gonna send it over. Another pro tip, I like to cut through my Laser Max Romark using 2 passes rather than 1 slow pass. I find that I get cleaner cuts with the Laser Max, especially on the metallics. Oh yeah. Now, when you're cutting Laser Max Romark, you're probably gonna get a little bit of schmutz around the edges, but don't worry, every single one of these cuts we're going to clean off with methanol because we need to anyway before they go into the Eufy Make to get UV printed. Time to cut out the T2. Oh, that's going to look saucy. Ooh.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
I love this stuff. This stuff's great. I can't wait to see what it looks like when we print on it. Last but not least, we got the copper. They call it rose gold, but it looks like copper. Final cuts before cleanup, looking good. All right, now that we finally got those cuts out of the way, it's time to finally head over to the Eufy Make, and I'll show you the process of getting your artwork registered perfectly on these laser cut acrylic decals, and they are going to be sweet. Okay, so I have done a lot of testing to get this going just right. I've blown a lot of ink, and I have been using this thing for months now. The Eufy Make is a very cool tool, a very fun tool for adding color to any of your laser engraving projects. This is just one of the projects that I've always wanted to try to see how it turned out. But I'm gonna share with you all the little tips and tricks that I've learned along the way that help get this done. Now, if you've got any ideas or you've got a Eufy Make and you wanna share your tips and tricks, please leave them in the comment below. I'd love to hear about it. First thing you're gonna wanna get is some cardstock. So this is the large bed that we're gonna be using, and you could use the small mini bed, but we're gonna be using the large bed, and you don't wanna print your outline right on this sticky surface that comes with the Eufy Make. You wanna get yourself some cardstock. I like to go to Blix and buy the big pieces of white cardstock and then cut them down to the exact size of this bed. And I actually have some right here. This is cut exactly the right size. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna set it right on the bed here. And this is a sticky bed, and I'm gonna line it up to the little registration marks, and then I'm just gonna put it down, put a little pressure. I put my hand underneath it. We're gonna put that down so it sticks right on there. Boom. Now we have something that we can print on. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna bring in that outline that we made over on Adobe Illustrator that is the exact shape of the cutout for the T2 decal that we're gonna make. So let's go over to the Eufy Make software and I'll show you how that works, and we'll pull that graphic in and size it correctly. All right, here we go. So When you open up the Eufy Make software, you're going to be presented with this screen right here. And the cool thing about the Eufy Make is that it automatically detected that whatever bed that you put in here, it's going to detect the bed. And we're not going to be using the camera on this. That's part of this tutorial, is that we're not going to be using the camera. So you're just going to go to upload your own image, and you see in here I've got everything organized, and I've got the main outline T2, and I also named it the exact size in millimeters of the height that it is. And that's really important because as of right now, and I hope that I might have missed an update, right now when you use the Eufy Make software, which I understand is going to be fixed, it doesn't import at size. So you have to remember what the size was when you made it on your art program and make that part of the file name so you can make it the correct size. This is really, really important right now. And until they update the software, hopefully that will be a thing of the past, which I think is right around the corner. But for right now, you got to remember one of the dimensions of your shape so everything lines up perfectly. So let's bring in that main outline, not the cut file, the thick stroke outline. So we'll bring that in, and it tries to fill up the whole page, which we don't want. But we know, because remember our file, it's 154.11 millimeters tall. And all I have to do up here is make sure that the ratio's locked and put in 154.11 millimeters and hit enter. And that is the actual shape that we want to print. Now you can print anywhere you want on the board. I'm going to print right here just because I might want to print another one later. I don't want to print dead center in the middle of the board. So I'm just going to print it right here. And since it's just an outline, the ink mode that I'm going to pick is just CMYK. I don't need any white underbase. I don't need any gloss. I'm just going to print that. So I've set it where I want it to print on the artboard. And then I've set it on CMYK. I'm going to have it on flat mode. I'm not trying to do anything fancy. Now, the other thing that I can do right now in advance before we get started is I can also bring in the art, right? So let's go ahead and bring in the art. Boom, there it is, not its size. I hope they fix that soon. So anyway, instead of trying to size it, we already know that it is 154.11 millimeters tall. And now, since it's got snapping feature turned on, if I drag this to the outline, it just snaps right in. But we don't need this right now, so we can come here to layers and we can turn that off. But it's still there, but it's not going to print. All right, so let's go ahead and select this, and we're going to print, send it to the printer. It's going to think about it, and now it's going to go through the process of measuring the height of whatever's on the table. And you can see that here. So it's bringing the table in. It's going to raise it up. It's going to take a quick picture to see if there's anything on the board that it's supposed to be measuring, but there's not, because we're just printing on that cardstock. And it takes a few seconds.
A few moments later.
There it is. Dum, dum, da, dum. And I've started the job. So we'll go ahead and let that print, and then we'll go on to the next step, which is placing our acrylic on that shape that we printed, adhering it down, and then loading in the color file and deciding what type of print we want to do.
More moments later.
So we got our trace outline done, as you can see. And the first thing you want to do after you print your trace outline is you want to take your laser cut file right here and make sure that it matches up perfectly. It should fit perfectly if you created all your files nice. All right, so let's move on to the next step. Couple of things I want to talk about really quick. One of the things I learned recently the hard way was when you're printing on acrylic with the Eufy Make, and I'm assuming any kind of UV printer, if this is not held down really tight, it's not that you have to worry about it slipping, you have to worry about it bowing. Because what I learned was that the UV lamp and the UV inks curing in there create heat, quite a bit of heat actually, enough to bow this up on the table while it was printing, because this is thin acrylic, and almost cause a head strike and ruin my printer, which didn't happen because I caught it. But as you can see, I pulled it just in time. And it wasn't the Eufy Make's fault, it was my fault for not making sure that my acrylic piece was down nice and tight and flat and not gonna lift up when that heat started being applied to the acrylic from the print head. So here's what we need to do to make sure that that doesn't happen. What I found was, first, I tried some blue tape on the bottom, which you've seen me use in my other videos. But remember, the back of this Laser Max, I get it with the adhesive already on it. So that's that really slick silicone coated stuff, and nothing wants to stick to it. So we're gonna put some dots all around the edges and definitely in the middle too. And then we're gonna place it right in our trace outline and then throw that color file on top of it and we'll be done. So let's do it. All right, so what I found works is getting yourself, I'm sure a lot of you crafters already have super glue laying around, and I'm just going to put dots around the edges, and it really doesn't bond as tight as you think it does, but it does bond.
James Bond.
This is the only thing I found to help keep this down so it doesn't warp and bend during the printing process. We're going to come over here and you're going to place it right in the trace outline. You got a little bit of slide action before it locks in. Boom, I like that right there. Now what I like to do, since I already cleaned this with methanol, I'm just pressing down lightly all around the edges and in the middle without sliding it, and that's it. Wait about 10 minutes, and then I'm gonna go ahead and print our full color graphic on that. Let's let that sit, and then we'll go back to the Eufy Make software and we'll drop in our color graphic and pick our printing style. All right, so it's been about 10 minutes and this is nice and secure down. It's not gonna lift off when we're printing. And now we're gonna go back to the Eufy Make software, bring in our color graphic, and I'll show you how that works. So over here, remember we had our color graphic already in, and we went down to the layers button, and we are going to now make it visible again. So now that it's visible, we're going to bring it over to our outline, and you see it just snaps right to it. I mean, it's pretty easy. One of the things you can do to make your life a little easier is, you can see I'm highlighted on this. You can actually rename these layers, color, layer, right? And now when I'm looking at the layers, I know what's what. So let's bring our color, we'll snap it to our outline. We'll go back to here, and the other one is our trace outline, and we'll remove that. So that is no longer visible. The only thing on here is the color graphic. Now, what type of print are we gonna do? There's lots of different prints that you can do. You can do white underbase and a color fill. You can do white color layer and then a gloss layer. You can do some really fancy stuff, which we'll get into in another video. But I think what we're gonna do for this one, just to really make it pop, is we're gonna do a feature called the flat raised. So it's basically going to generate a preview. It's not the complete 3D like you saw me do in my prior videos, which by the way, I'll list in a link in the description below if you haven't watched my full Eufy Make video. It's not quite like that 3D depth map rendering, but what it does is it raises up all the prints, and you can select the thickness of how far you want it raised up to a crazy amount like 3 millimeters, which is a little nuts. I think we're just gonna do a 0.5 millimeter raised up print, and the color mode, we're gonna do color, and you can actually get a little preview and you can zoom in at what that's gonna look like. And it's just slightly raised, it's not too extreme, and you can kind of get a preview of what that's gonna look like. Now that we've picked our color style, we're going to simply send it to the printer. So let's go ahead and do that now. We're just gonna click print. Now, one of the things it's gonna do, first and foremost, is it's going to measure the height again, which it needs to do. And this time it's gonna catch that there's something on there a little bit higher, which is our acrylic that we put down. So it's doing that now. It's bringing it in. Let me show you. So you can see it's brought the table back in. It's gonna take a very quick picture of the table to make sure that there's nothing else on there. And it also gives it a guide on where to go and measure. So if you had something here or back there, it would sense that and then bring the table to that area to do its measurement. So now that it's taken that quick picture, I'm gonna bring it in and let's see if we can get the lasers doing their thing. There's 4 red lasers that are now measuring the height, and it's figuring out the height of that object we put in there perfectly with these crisscross lasers. So it knows right where to put the print head. Very cool. And now it's sending the file over. We'll hit the print button and we'll see what this turns out like when we're all done. I'm really excited to show you guys how this is gonna turn out. It's gonna be so cool. What is this wizardry? No way! Oh man, that is so awesome. So that was the raised style. You could have just done flat, but this one has a little bit of height to it. And just to show you that the super glue does lift off afterwards without peeling off the back, you just put a little something underneath there.
My leg!
Just a couple little nuggets of super glue on there. All right, so now I'm gonna try, I think next I'm gonna try just the flat without the raised. Because I think I still need to get the choke feature right, where I need to choke back the white underbase, but that's all right. I'm still learning, but man, this came out so sick. All right, now that we've gone through that first tutorial, I think it's time to go for broke. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna lay out another Terminator, we're gonna get the Porsche in there, and we're gonna do the Veterans logo all at once. So we're gonna set all of our trace lines up here on a fresh board, and then we're gonna load all the graphics in, print out the outlines, and then drop some color on them. So let's do it. All right, so for our final send off, we're gonna bring in all the different art files that I prepared, and we're gonna use the exact same method that we used to set up the T2. First, we're gonna bring in our outlines and we're gonna print those first. Then we're going to apply some glue after those are done printing and put our pieces of acrylic. And finally, we're going to send that all over so we can print all the decals at once. We're not doing any flat raised. We're not doing any 3D graphics on these, although you could experiment with that. We're just going to keep it simple and do the flat engraving. And the color style I'm gonna set in the settings is the white, CMYK, and gloss finish. But I'm gonna put down 2 layers of white, and I'm gonna set the choked to 0.15 millimeters, and that's gonna slightly shrink the white underbase underneath. And I found that I got great results with those settings on these decals. Holy crap. Oh man, that looks so sick. Oh my God, here, those came out fantastic. Wow. Man, these are sweet. This is what I'm talking about, folks. With the right combination of your laser cutting, the right material, you can do like so many cool things with the Eufy Make. This is just one idea. I'm curious, leave a comment below on what kind of stuff you would make with your Eufy Make and some Laser Max from Romark. I want to hear it. This came out so, I mean, look at the detail in that. And that. And that. All right, let's pop these off of here. Like I said, we did use some super glue, and just get yourself a little knife and these should pop right up. We keep the adhesive on little bit of paper on the back, but no big deal. Important part is that we keep the adhesive on. Look at these. Check this one out. Oh man, I am super impressed right now. That's great. Trying to get you that, show you that, how metallic these are. So cool. All right, well, that about wraps it up for this episode of Laser Engraving 911. I hope you got value and you enjoyed watching this full tutorial on how to make these amazing laser cut metallic accented decals using the Eufy Make. This was a super fun project for me. I am in love with the way that these metallic decals turned out. It's a great example of how combining your laser cutter and different materials with the Eufy Make printer can come up with some amazing results. The ideas are limitless. In fact, if you have an idea on how you would use the Laser Max material and your Eufy Make printer, leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear your ideas. And if you haven't picked up a Eufy Make printer or haven't pre-ordered yours yet, what are you doing? This thing is awesome. I've had it for months now, and this is a beta unit, and it is just kicking strong. Yes, they're still working out some kinks in the software, but they're constantly updating stuff, making it better, and overall, my thoughts on this printer are it is a win-win for anybody who gets one. And finally, last but not least, thank you all for your support. Thank you to my subscribers, and if you haven't subscribed, I don't know where you've been. Smash that subscribe button, hit that like button, let YouTube know that this content is great. So with that, we'll see you around on Laser Engraving 911.